Welcome to Everything You Love, Episode 3. Hey everybody, welcome to episode 3 of Everything You Love. I'm your host, Rob Arnold, and on today's episode, I wanted to talk about the song 6, which you saw me just do a rendition of there, and talk about how we in Chimaira wrote the song, how we came about the arrangement, why we chose to do certain things, and just about the songwriting process in general. And at the end of this, I hope to sum up a powerful message to aspiring songwriters and musicians who are interested in writing music for people to enjoy, because I got a lot of questions and comments, mainly comments in my recent Chimaira playthrough videos where I play through Chimaira songs. A lot of people requested the song 6, so I took note of that. And then a lot of the questions I receive are about songwriting. How do you write songs? What's the Chimaira songwriting approach? How do you go about it? So I thought this would be a great example to talk about that. So let's just start breaking it down, and I'll tell you how it developed. First, I don't even really know what the song 6 is about, so we might as well talk about that. 6 was kind of had the intentions to be an instrumental track. We had started with Implements of Destruction on our Impossibility of Reason record and didn't do an instrumental on Self-Titled, so we kind of had in mind that we wanted to do one for Resurrection. But then as it started developing, there were good spots for vocals, and Mark started singing along while we were playing it, and it turned into what it turned into, which is kind of like a half song, half instrumental sort of thing, at least how I think about it. It's pretty long. There's lots of just instrumental breaks. Mark's playing guitar on it like he did in Implements of Destruction. But there was room for vocals, and it turned out cool, and it seems to be a popular song that a lot of people dig. So let me hit up Mark here and see what the lyrics are about before we move forward. So there you have it. It seems that the song was about the 6 band members at the time in Chimaira, and that the beast was not going to be able to destroy us, but as you saw Mark said, it ultimately destroyed us, so touche. Okay, so a lot of songs start with, let's just say a guitar player, it could be anybody, but a guitar player having a riff idea. At least that's how it worked in Chimaira. Early days, somebody would think of a riff or a part, bring it in, and then the band would develop it and talk about it. And back then, we didn't have the technology to just write in a computer like a lot of people are doing today. We had to play together. That's just how it was done back in the day. You had to play together. You had to remember all your parts. You thought about them at night. And you came in the next day, kept working on it, kept refining. And then, finally, once you feel like the song is finished, you generally play that song every practice as well, every rehearsal as you're writing new stuff, and you get better and better at it. And then the better you are at it, the better it's going to turn out on record. And that old style was awesome, and I liked it a lot. And we were still doing that on the Resurrection record for the most part. By that time, I think we had gotten M-Boxes, which are little audio interfaces for software called Pro Tools. So we were tracking ideas into the computer at the time, but for the most part, we were still in the rehearsal space writing together. So I had started to put together this little piece that was kind of just all clean or acoustic. I was doing it on electric guitar, but not really a lot of distortion, and it's a big part you hear in 6. But I had started to put it together, starting with the I'd put all that together, but it had gone right into this part. So it didn't even contain any of the riffs in between there, and I'll get to that in a sec. But then I jam out this whole section all the way through to so I had created that whole piece, and I've been working on it for a little while at home, and one day I brought it to the studio, to the rehearsal spot, and brought it to the guys, and I said, hey, I got this thing, let's check it out. And I played it for everybody, and the moment I finished, originally this part here, again I ended with this, which in the song now repeats. That whole section happens twice, but it had only happened once in my original rendition of it. And immediately when I finished and looked up for everybody's reply, Jim goes, dude, you gotta do that part again. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, that part was sick, you gotta do it again. And that's how we started working on the song. We kind of like backwards. We started working from there, did it twice, and you could feel how Andals has more of a straightforward beat in the first half of it. It's got that feel. And then when it comes around the second time, it's got a little more of that stutter. Gives it a totally different feel. Obviously the right choice. But when he first said it to me, that it should happen twice, I was like, I don't know about that. I think once is enough. So there is proof number 1 in a lot of things I'm going to explain here, that another person's opinion, another writer in the room can give you a perspective that you hadn't thought of. A lot of the time, I know me, when I have an idea, I think it's concrete, it's solid as it is. I'm often reluctant to criticism, to suggestion, but I always say that in the end, it was the right choice. Especially being in the studio, a lot of time producers will say to you, oh, let's do this, or change that here, or transpose it up to this key, and you'd be like, dude, we've been playing it like this forever, this is the best. This is the best way. And a lot of the time, that different perspective, that fresh set of ears that hasn't been listening to it being played a million times, but hears it for the first time and says, oh, it'd be a little better like this, is right. And there's a reason why bands pay these producers and go in to see them, because they have good ideas. They're great at songwriting, they're great at hearing melody, they're great at suggesting alternatives and better ways to do things. And so, while you don't take every suggestion your producer makes, most of the time it's a good idea to at least try it out, to at least hear what it's going to be like. At any rate, we started working on the song. All of us there in the rehearsal spot, and I'm sure after this intro riff that we ultimately ended up going into the, which has the over it. So this riff has Mark written all over it. So I'm playing what you just heard there. Matt's just doing the lower octave of that. All right, and then we hit right into a riff that has Matt written all over it. Blood after blood, you know? And that picks up the song, a new tempo, gives it a ferocity that leads us into the next tempo change. Again, a riff with Mark written all over it. I could just tell his feel, I can always tell Matt's feel. Grew up listening to both their bands, you know, and just, so anyways, if those guys wouldn't be there to make those suggestions, the song would have been just how I had it in my head originally. Those parts would never exist. So there is point number 2 of why it's important to write with other musicians in the room. Those parts would never exist. The song would never have existed in the form you hear it in today. As other guys are like, oh, here, let's try speeding this up here. Let's try slowing this down here. Oh, what happens if we double that riff? What happens, you know, you talk about it, you get to feel it. There's something so special about feeling it with the other musicians. And then when it feels right and it clicks and it locks in and everybody looks at each other like, hell yeah. Me and Animals always used to joke around that Lane Staley and Jerry Cantrell, their harmonies are so sick. And the stuff they'd write over riffs, they had to like slap hands in the studio after they hear the final take. Like, dude, we just made that? That's so badass. You know, so it's just a great feeling to create. And when something comes out and it feels good and it's solidified, there's something really cool about that. So if I were just writing in the computer like I was, those parts never would have been stumbled upon. But let me move on. Then from there we kind of head in to the, actually break it down again, another Matt riff. Sick. Right? So, and all these riffs develop through time. They're solidified. Matt, maybe, I don't even know, but maybe Matt went like this. You know, and somebody was like, oh, let's just do this once. You know, so everybody sits there and talks about it and refines it, and they get to a point where everybody's happy with it. Because somebody might be like, it doesn't feel right to go to 1. What if we tried 2? And then you play it and you're like, oh, that's a good idea. So it's bouncing ideas off of everybody and then not moving on until everyone's satisfied with the current part. That feels good. A lot of the time, too, you'll be working and you have an idea. Oh, let's go back to riff A and try this. Now that we've just wrote riff D here, what if we inserted that feel into riff A? And it's just a fun process to go with. So then we end up back into a part that I had originally brought, this whole section. So that never had the rhythm chords behind it originally, but then now Mark's playing those, Matt's playing the same thing as me. I'm able to hit that solo. Hearing Matt jam that riff behind. Then we end up in this break here, you know, the... End up playing that whole guy. Break it down into the... Again, that may have even been just like simpler, but once you hear the drums come in, once you hear what Andals is going to do, oh, let me talk about Andals for a sec. Backing up, before that whole middle interlude, you got this part, which ended up becoming the outro as well, too. But that right there is an Andals type thing, having those weird time signatures in there. And Andals is the guy in the band that knows theory. He knows timing, but none of us, Mark, Jim, Chrys, Matt, or I, know anything about that. We're strictly just feel players, what feels good. Where Andals puts a lot of thought and math and theory behind everything. He's also, maybe you've heard us say, the rhythm police. He would say, oh, those rhythms clash, or we've used that rhythm one too many times, or it'd be better to do this in 6 tuplets, or, you know, he was just the guy that would point that stuff out. So he suggested changing up the time, and it got so weird that we had to write it on a whiteboard, like, okay, it goes 1 time, then 9, then 7, then 3, and we'd all sit there and stare at this whiteboard to figure out how we were developing this part and to remember it until we memorized it. And then, little side thing, even coming back to play this song while we were rehearsing for our reunion show in 2017, we had to put the whiteboard up again just to practice the song. And at least I know I was just staring at it trying to remember the part, because it's crazy how it all changes there at the end. But so again, drummers write a different way and bring something different to the table. I'm a guitar player who can play some drums, and I could certainly write cool beats in a drum machine and all that, but I still think like a guitar player. Andals thinks like a drummer, and that's what drummers do. So another hugely important element to songwriting, writing with your drummer, writing with your other players, having opinions of different musicians, to talk about transitions. A lot of the time in computer written material too, just going from a verse to a chorus just falls into one another, where when you're actually jamming that, you feel the drum fill, you feel different little things to go from part to part that just kind of get lost if there aren't enough brains there. Of course, I know that there are times when there are too many cooks in the kitchen and all that, but if they're not there, Bob Rock once said that the magic happens in the studio through improvisation. Bob Rock's a Metallica producer, for those who don't know, a guy I totally respect. Did the Black Album, Motley Crue stuff, Bon Jovi stuff, but the magic happens in the studio when you're just free to create. Most of the time you have a great structure or skeleton down, but if you're open to hearing input from others and what they have to say, as I was mentioning before, a lot of cool things can happen. He's proof of it. So back to the end here, and each riff would develop a little bit as everybody got to talk about it, and we get to this part. So again, now we're doubling that, and I already talked about that. And then we decided to go back into that kind of like intro jam. But we develop a little bit. And then during that whole part, Andals picked up the beat. Again, raising the tempo, raising the tension, raising the feel to drop back into the down, never back down. So that big, powerful outro there that then has that crazy timing thing, and just cool. So through all this, I wanted to stress the importance of playing together with your guys if you have that opportunity. If you do, you're lucky. I realize it's tough to get bands, to get everybody together, to get everybody at the rehearsal studio every night. It's tough to do that, but I honestly think that that's what it takes. Everybody's got to be committed. Everybody's got to be on board. And if they aren't, you got to find somebody that is. A lot of the time, early on in bands, it's weeding out the weak, survival of the fittest, until you can find the guys who are as committed as you, who want it as bad as you. And then from there, it's a great attitude, talent, and a lot of luck. So yeah, that was just a quick summary of how things came together with the song 6. I realized it was brief, and there was, actually days that it spanned over, not just 10 minutes of putting the song together, but that's what it takes. But certainly if you have any comments or more questions about it, you can ask below. And I hope you enjoyed this breakdown of Chimaira's 6. Please follow me on the socials, Insta, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, @RobArnoldWorld, Patreon as well. Patreon is a community I'm trying to grow to help me build this content and help support my albums and things like that. Thank you so much to everybody who's signed on so far. It really means a lot to me. If you'd like to find out more about what I'm talking about, just visit patreon.com/RobArnoldWorld. Thank you again, everybody. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Feel free to comment below. Cheers, guys. Hope to see everybody in episode 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Bow.
There's no mistaking he's a murderer, and he's talking to me. He wants us.